Hello and welcome to another edition of 310 to Left, the train leaving the station. We are ready to roll. I'm Tom Caron. Alex Speier of the Boston Globe joins me as always. And Alex, how was your weekend?
Eventful, got to watch the familial slew of sporting events from baseball to soccer to kids swinging in trees at ropes courses. So all exciting. How about you, Tom? Anything exciting?
It was an exciting weekend. I got to be the commencement speaker at the University of Southern Maine, inspiring the next generation of young leaders to get jobs and get off their parents' dole, which was sort of the message, I think, by and large. I think I set a new personal best. I clapped. I believe the number was 5,000 times, and that's an estimation. I did lose count. But I think I averaged 5 claps per graduate. There were 1,000 who got their diplomas. If they didn't, I had a system, Alex. If they didn't get enough, if I felt they weren't getting enough support, they would get a 6th or a 7th clap.
Wow.
And if they were getting, every now and then you had the family that was screaming, they might have only got 3 or 4 because they didn't need my support.
There are a lot of students who are going to be going back and seeing how many times you clapped to understand where they fell on the spectrum now. So hope that there's a full video record of your response to each one of those students.
Oh, it's there. There's a video. You can see I'm clapping. It's funny. We had someone who used to work at Nesson had a brother who graduated, was in the class, and he was texting one of our directors and said to Jay, he said, Tom was really engaged. He clapped for everybody. So see, the hard work pays off. It doesn't go unnoticed, Alex. All right. Just always remember that.
No one has ever accused you of being anything but thorough, Tom.
Yeah. Well, that's we don't have enough time. It's only a 45-minute podcast. I did get to watch some sports as well. First of all, how about the Bruins? That was something. Amazing. Saturday night.
Yeah.
No time to rest. I hate that they launched right into this series with the Panthers, but what a Game 7 that was, wasn't it? And I guess the entire Red Sox team got together. Pete Fatsi, former hockey player, hitting coach of the Red Sox, massive hockey fan. Used to play with Frank Vacciano, who went on to play for the Bruins out in Western Mass. And Pete Fatsi and the whole group got together. But did you hear the story? They lost the feed when both goals were scored. So the buffered. It got the spinning wheel of death. And the Maple Leafs scored, and then the Bruins scored a minute and a half later, and then they got the feedback, and it went from 0-0 to 1-1 with 5 minutes left. And then they tried to go back to the hotel after regulation to get there to watch overtime. But, Pasta scored like a couple minutes in, and they were walking into the lobby, and the game had just ended. So they missed all the goals.
This is the least successful viewing experience I've heard of since my efforts again, we're talking, this is diverting from a podcast, 25 years ago to watch a Super Bowl while I was in South Africa. Difficult story. Did you get it? Did you get to watch it? I ended up getting to watch the last, let's call it like from the last 3 quarters of it. This was the Broncos Falcons one of many years ago. It required a trip all over Cape Town, South Africa, in the dead of night with many doors closed in my face before I finally found a former politician from San Francisco who was then based in South Africa and opened his door of a bar in a haze to say, "Oh, you want to watch the Super Bowl? Yeah, man, sure, come on in." So there we go.
It's funny. This would be a great day. We'll have to do this sometime. Trying to find sports, how hard it was back in the day. These kids today with their streaming, they have no idea. But on my honeymoon, we were in Spain, and this was in 1992, and it was October. It was the World Series. And I had convinced this bartender to stay open so I could come back because it was in the wee hours. And I went back to watch. He said, "Oh, I got it. And when I went back, it was some cricket World Cup. It was not what we had agreed on watching. And he had no way of finding it. And I didn't get to watch the game. So there you go.
That was the first quarter for me of that Super Bowl in South Africa.
Yeah. It's a podcast, right? We're supposed to waste time with stories. Gord Downie, the late lead singer of the Tragically Hip, which was a wonderful band in Canada, and whose godfather was Harry Sinden. I once interviewed him in Toronto. And he told the same story, like about being on the road in Australia or South Africa trying to get the Bruins game. And back then you would have to try to move a satellite, right? And going down, like, no, it's an Anik D transponder 2. I'm fairly sure of this. Just go out back. That's how I used to try to find games. But now you just log on and there it is.
And here we are, Tom, in front of the world, available from a phone, a computer, or wherever the internet works.
Yes. And hopefully soon, wherever you download your podcasts. But we'll get into that another day. Let's get into what happened this weekend. They finally managed to overcome the mastery of the rotted, rancid meat. The whatever that was, the summer sausage. Has run its course. I don't know if the Twins will continue using it now, but they snapped the 12-game losing streak or winning streak, 12-game winning streak of the Twins, snapped their own 3-game losing streak. Good win Sunday. If you're going to win 1 out of 3, it's always nice to make it the last one because then you go on the road feeling better about yourself as you arrive in Atlanta.
And it's kind of getting towards the end of this period where the Red Sox have been down in their rotation. Several starters. Nick Pivetta is going to be coming back this week. But to see Cooper Criswell once again throwing as well as he did in a way that is so far divorced from how almost anyone else in baseball is throwing is pretty remarkable. I mean, I do think that this is a case where there was a lot of skepticism, frankly, about the who the Red Sox acquired and didn't acquire over the course of the offseason. I don't think that I think that Criswell was kind of lumped in as like, oh, you only signed 2 guys to major league deals. One of them was Giolito, gone for the year. The other one was Cooper Criswell, who was signed to essentially be a depth guy who would be optionable over the course of this year. And Cooper Criswell, despite the fact that his fastball average is less than 90 miles an hour, has what have been grading as 3 above average to plus pitches and is executing like crazy in a way that has really allowed the Red Sox to weather this very, very depleted start of their season.
14 1/3 innings, 1 earned run over his last 3 starts. And if you could have an inning of the year by a pitcher, the second inning yesterday, when he loads them up with 3 consecutive hits to begin the inning, not one of them hit hard, 2 of them were very soft contact that found their way into being singles. So you've got bases loaded, nobody out. He gets back-to-back strikeouts and then gets the little tapper back to the mound that he has the presence of mind to flip home and doesn't break stride, sprints into the dugout where they said he looked like one of those balloon the balloon men at a car dealership, the tall, lanky things that flap in the wind. But it was, that it's not often that a pitcher getting out of a jam does it in a way that gives a team momentum, but that was absolutely a momentum builder for the Red Sox.
Yeah, I mean those kinds of innings where you have kind of the mighty yop at the end of it, right? Where everyone on the team is so pumped about the run probability going from at least a couple over the course of an inning. Like that would be a decent outcome, maybe an average outcome for that situation, and instead you get a 0 on the board. That changes the course of a game, right? That is like when you talk about all these win probability charts. That's a massive swing when you have a team going from that kind of building rally early in the game that can change the whole game. Could knock Criswell out early if it gets away from him a little bit, and instead you have someone tightening down. Again, this has been a very different experience for the Red Sox this year compared to last year in terms of what it's looked like when one of the primary starters hasn't been taking the mound, and it's why they're afloat and in a respectable spot at this stage of the season.
Incredibly, they've been able to continue doing this. 4 starters, if you include Giolito, on the injured list. You start to get them back, as you alluded to. We're going to see Nick Pivetta, most likely game 2 of the little 2-game series down in Atlanta. They get an off day in Atlanta after winning the final game in Minnesota. And it was a good time to catch up with the pitching coach of the Red Sox. Andrew Bailey joined us from Atlanta on the day off, fresh off the pickleball court. He's closing in on 40. It is time he starts playing pickleball. Shuffleboard will probably be right behind that as well. As we all get older, you have to do things that will limit wear and tear. But a great conversation about the way they put together the lowest ERA of any staff in baseball. So let's listen to it, and then we'll catch on the back end. Here's Andrew Bailey pitching coach of the Red Sox, joining us from Atlanta on 310 to Left. Well, everyone around baseball is talking about the Bailey effect, and this is week 2 of the podcast, so we're hoping the Bailey effect has a halo effect on our podcast. We're going for big ratings, so we've got Andrew Bailey, the pitching coach of the Red Sox. Andrew, how are you?
Yeah, doing good, man. Enjoying the off day here in Atlanta, and excited to get after it tomorrow and Wednesday.
Listen, I know you're not a guy who's going to take any individual credit for any of this. So let's talk as a group, the run prevention unit, whatever you want to call a group of everybody who's come together to try to get the most out of these pitchers. 2.61 ERA as you begin the series in Atlanta. It is the best in Major League Baseball. Has it exceeded your expectations, or did you see this in the group when you came together in Fort Myers?
Yeah, I mean, I think even before Fort Myers, when I was first hired, there's a lot of talent on the roster. There's a lot of talent in that room, and there's a really good support staff here. Blessed with the ability to work with, of course, Kevin Walker and Jason Veritek and Devin Rose, one of our pitching assistants, all the way into our analytics group with Dave Miller and even our bullpen catchers, utilizing their strengths to get the best out of our pitchers. And there's a lot of talent on our roster. These guys are extremely talented, and they've met every expectation, and they're holding themselves accountable to high standards right now, which is good.
Well, Andrew, I think that all of us have made a big deal throughout the course of this year about how infrequently you guys are using fastballs, particularly four-seam fastballs. So let's wind this back. 2009, 2010, you break into the big leagues, immediately become one of the most dominant pitchers in baseball, throwing fastballs 2/3 of the time, right? You were probably top 5% of fastball usage rates. When did you start hating fastballs? What happened to you?
I don't know if would you qualify my fastball as a cutter or fastball? So if we're tabbing fastball, the cutters as fastball, sure, but I think I threw a ton of cutters. I don't hate four seamers. I think that's you look at like Nick Pivetta and Cutter and some of our bullpen guys, they have some elite four seamers. I think that the way your body self-organizes down the mound, the way your kind of anatomy is put together, the way that you deliver a baseball, the things that you can do, we definitely want to stick to our guys' strengths. So when it comes to fastball quality, you have guys that have quality two seams, guys that have quality four seams, some guys that can do both. But just because you can throw a certain pitch type doesn't make it good or productive, especially at the major league level. So really just tapping into what guys do well, knowing what profiles will work against what sided handedness, leveraging your strengths in zone at all costs, and of course, like attacking your areas of intent. Optimizing our pitchers is just taking a look under the hood at, okay, is this pitch type blend with the way that they self-organize, what the rest of their arsenal has, and like, are we better off leveraging a different pitch type in lieu of a fastball or a slider or a changeup? So I don't think the goal was to eliminate the four seam at all. I don't think that the goal is to eliminate fastballs. I think that randomness, there's a quality to randomness as well. I think when you start getting in the higher thresholds of fastball usage, there's just more damage attached to fastballs, throughout the history of baseball. So, leveraging your best weapons, and sometimes that is a fastball, is what our goal is, and to be in the zone at all times. And I think that there's a narrative in baseball that like needs to be broken in terms of like pitcher's best strike pitch is a fastball. I don't think that's necessarily true. I also think that it's true for a long period of time that like we threw spin pitches in two strike counts where you're maybe trying to do a little bit more chase. So, kind of that mindset was like, oh, you can't throw off speed pitches for strikes. I don't really think that's wholly true. So sometimes, cutter or slider may be a guy's best glove strike pitch relative to the fastball.
Well, it's interesting because there's a corollary to that idea of the diminished fastball usage, which is that you guys have been one of the sweepiest teams in baseball, right? I think that you're second in sweeper usage on a rate basis in baseball. How much is that pitch kind of breaking the database of what hitters are doing. Like, to have gone from an era when you had sliders that were moving, where you would your average movement was like 5 inches, to now seemingly everyone has, anywhere from like, from a foot of break with of horizontal break to the Houcks of the world with like 19, 20 inches of break on a vertical horizontal break. Like, how much has that pitch transformed the game, and why do you love that pitch?
Yeah, it's definitely transformed the game. I also think that like it's just kind of a new label, right? Like years ago, it was just tabbed as slider, and a hitting coach would just say, "Oh, he has a ton of sweep to it, or a ton of movement on it." I think just labeling that pitch, it's kind of over the last couple of years has kind of taken on its own little life, so to say. But yeah, I mean that pitch specifically, the sweeper yields a ton of weak contact and swing and miss. It's a seam effect slider, so looking at grips and the way that the ball leaves the hand, being able to use the technology that we can tap into to understand the seam effects and why it moves so much is the goal, and then being able to throw that thing in zone relentlessly, because it does yield such minimal damage.
Well, you've got someone in Tanner Houck who has just blossomed under this new philosophy, right? Or taken to the lessons everyone's teaching. Talk a little about him specifically, because this is a guy who up to now had really yet to establish himself as a guy who can get third time through the order. He can go deeper into games. And now he says he's got so much conviction, he feels like he's just playing catch out there. He believes in anything the catcher's calling, and that speaks to buy-in, right? To the entire concept. He's not only bought into it, but he now believes that he can just go out and execute and not think about any of it. What does that mean to you guys when you hear something like that?
Yeah, it means a lot. It means he's in a really good headspace. We want our guys externally focused as much as possible, focusing on the big box, the strike zone. When we have the internal thoughts creep in, kind of command and execution can kind of suffer, and some self doubt. So we want our guys, when they're competing in game, we want them as external as focused as possible. And with Tanner specifically, man, he's so unique. The way that he throws, we want to tap into that kind of outlier movement that he's got. That's what separates him, and what really is his label as a big league pitcher. So relentlessly attacking the zone with his best pitch types is the goal. He loves to talk about just playing catch. And I'm really proud of the work that he put in, and taking a look at his arsenal, during the course of the off season, and trying to put together a best plan with our group to support him, and make him the best version of himself every fifth or sixth day was really important. And he was extremely open-minded, came into camp ready to go. He had a fantastic off season, and was really open-minded. And I think just some structure and some work and some accountability on different things, has really put him in a good position to go out every fifth day, and go pitch as deep deep into the game as AC wants him to have the ball. So really proud of the work that he put in this offseason, the open-mindedness, the fluidness of communication and conversation. And I don't think there's a right answer or wrong answer to any of this. We want guys to be able to pitch free of mind when they're out there, but understand what they do really well, and do that relentlessly. Baseball should be, pitching should be boring. You should just do the same thing over and over and over again, until the hitters tell you differently. And even when the hitters tell you differently, maybe on a one-off game, do you really change at that point in time, or do you just stick with it? And all of our guys have been throwing the ball really well, and I'm really proud of the work that they've all put in, especially Tanner.
With Houck, it is super interesting to think about some of the changes that have been made, whether it's the movement profile of some of the pitches, right? Like obviously the slider sweeper has gotten bigger again, added 4 inches of break. The splitter he's been more comfortable with. So I wonder if you could kind of walk us through what the off-season kind of homework assignments were for him when you had that initial introductory Zoom. And then to me, if you can layer on top of that, like the thing that really seems to have made all of it work so well is that repositioning of where he stood on the rubber and kind of creating a really nice lane for him to be able to throw a pitch where his movement works in the zone. And so, kind of interested in how it worked on paper and then how the practical application kind of unfolded a little bit differently this spring.
Yeah, I mean, again, like looking at the splitter, the success of the sinker, and then being able to kind of tap into the slider a little bit. Tanner did a great job this offseason of kind of like, to be honest, like developing the slider a little bit on his own and making some slight adjustments, on the split. But again, like his missed patterns are typically arm side, just the way that he unwinds down the mound. So putting him in a position to grab strikes early in counts was kind of the name of the game. So when his backup reps, tend to happen, we're still grabbing strikes as like kind of the bare minimum, right? So when his slider misses arm side or his splits kind of arm side, at least has a chance to grab a strike. And then the way that he unwinds down the mound, a little bit of crossbody. And again, like it was just looking under the hood, getting to know the player. What does he want to be? Amplifying his voice in the conversation as well. Everyone kind of has their own development path, timetable for that. I think big leaguers are really never done developing. And as soon as we think we're done developing, complacency sets in, and then we can kind of watch the success unwind as well. So Tanner's doing a great job of staying focused on what he needs to do, asking great questions on how to continue to get better, but really sticking to his strengths. And again, like it wasn't earth shattering. It's just talking through like, okay, his four seamer, his cutter, what do we need to do there? How do we make the cutter a little bit of a better weapon? What grip adjustment or profile do we want to attack? Is the four seam valuable in his arsenal? I think there could be some value in there, but like for right now, when you want to throw a four seam, just throw one of your other other weapons that is having so much success. So again, it's just open conversations, and yeah, it's just I don't really think that like a lot has been done other than some education on what he does really well, and he was really open about it. Wants to be really great, and he has been, and looking forward to watching him, go out there every fifth and sixth day compete.
It seems obvious, right, when you can get a picture to maximize his strength. But then there's other guys that you've convinced to throw new pitches. And Garrett Whitlock, during spring training, the gyro slider, the one seamer. Kind of take us through that process a little bit. How do you identify a pitch that a guy isn't throwing that you say this might work for him? And how do you convince the pitcher to try something completely new?
Yeah, I mean, with Witt, I think when you looked at his, fastball tilt being in the 130 kind of tilt range, both his two seam and the four seam, the way that he throws the rest of his arsenal, for me, it's just easier to maximize the two seam profile, in with the introduction of some seam effects. I think if you meet a pitching coach that can induce vertical break on a four seam, I'd love to talk to him and learn from him or her. And I think that like when we looked at Witt, just trying to optimize the sinker, talking to him through some conversation. He referenced in college he used to throw a one seam, so I said, yeah, let's take a peek at that for sure. And out of the chute, it was comfortable for him, and he was able to execute. So that was an easy kind of change for him. So the education around kind of that tilt that he was in with both his two and the four, and then just understanding that we definitely wanted to take a look at the sweeper, his changeups, his bread and butter, and that's always been a really good pitch for him. So continue to leverage that, and then take a look at kind of his cutter, and then he just was taking step by step and just checking each box, and it was amazing to watch it unwind, and credit to him. He's continuing to want to learn, and then late in the spring, I was like, okay, I guess we're on chapter 7 now. Let's see if we can get the gyro going and really fill out the arsenal. And it was just in one bullpen. I had mentioned it to him. I said, hey, can you try something for me? And he was, yeah, absolutely. And showed him the grip, he immediately, I just gave you a thumbs up. I guess my FaceTime nowadays. But so he in one bullpen he took right to it, and then he threw the backfield game against the Twins in Jet Blue, and he like punched out the world, and they're all lefties, and so he got a ton of work with it. And I was just like, oh my goodness, because for Witt, we're what are we trying, like, for each guy? It's like, what are we trying to solve for? And for him, we wanted to limit the barrels that he found last year, and that was attacking the he's always been a strike thrower and competitive with the zone, and then increase some strikeouts and see if we can find some. And so the gyro slider was, he was able to sustain some velo with it, and able to execute it. And it just gives him a nice complementary, piece in his arsenal, and has taken to it, and excited to get him back hopefully soon. And I love having him around, man. His communication and the conversations that he has, the questions that he asks, they all want to be really good, and just proud of the work that they're putting in.
I guess we should keep talking about young starters for you that are taking steps forward. To me, Cutter Crawford had a mix that looks, the shape of the pitches that he's throwing this year looks pretty similar to what he'd thrown before. I think the usage, it's for him, it's Alex Cora used to talk about how he had the buffet of pitches, right? He would throw 5-6 different pitch types and would sometimes maybe pick the wrong item. I think back to like Daisuke Matsuzaka's in some of his early time in Boston when there would be a lot of choices and it could make things difficult.
Yeah.
For him, was it a matter of just kind of editing a little bit? Like, he still throws everything, but just saying, okay, sweeper is going to be your third offering. Let's use that in conjunction with the four-seamer, which has that very special spin quality so that it does have that carry, as well as the cutter, and go from there.
Yeah. Yeah, Cutter's got a real elite arsenal. He's amazing to work with. And again, just like the utilization of the arsenal, just taking a look at some usage rates, that's kind of really where he's grown, and he's grown tremendously as a leader. Wanting to get deep into games, always wanting to, but the other day when he gets through 7, and just out of the work that consistently puts in. And these guys pride themselves on getting deep into games, and they should be able to. And with Cutter, I think continuing to harness the split is an area of development, and he's done tremendous work on that, and he's starting tomorrow night. Excited to see what he brings to the table. But again, with Cutter, it's just he's got some unique qualities. I think there's a area of deception that you can't really quantify in his delivery with his arm stroke, that's unique to him. And he's really able to leverage a lot of his best weapons, and again, lean on that cutter and the sweeper more often. And obviously he's got the elite fastball behind it as well.
Andrew, there's a lot of talk about injuries on the pitching side, right? Maybe more than ever. Guys are throwing harder. They're throwing more year round. They're trying new things that maybe they haven't done. What's your take on how you get that back under control, or can we? I mean, where does this go from here? To me, it's a perfect storm, right? Guys throw harder year round than they ever have before. They're trying new grips and torquing differently, and then we're making them do it with less time between pitches, right? You bring all that together, you're bound to get more injuries. Where does it go from here? How can you get it under control?
Yeah, I don't know if I necessarily have the answers there. We know that velocity is king in everything we do. We know that velocity at the major league level, has success. So I think from a development standpoint, players are always going to be, looking to add velocity. And I don't think, you can blame them for that. I also think as like an industry, we've been able to, a different, genres that may or may not had an opportunity at the major league level, because they've been able to add velocity and be curious with pitch shapes. So and then you talk about the recovery time. There's a lot that goes into it. I also think players are bigger, faster, stronger than they were years ago, to create those velocities. And I mean, I'm definitely not a scientist or a doctor, but like, you talk about, the joints and ligaments withstanding the torque, and the stress. You add like bigger muscle mass and, arm speed and all of that. So all of it is tapped into, the injury and maximizing recovery and being, being diligent on knowing where our guys are on a daily basis, and the communication there is key. Being a little bit protective when we need to be, of course, and pushing when we need to push, but we want to keep our guys on the field. You always want your best players on the field as often as possible. But I really don't have an answer for you. To be honest, on how to kind of combat the injuries that we're seeing around the game of baseball right now. I think there's a lot that goes into it, and there's a lot of nuance as well.
Andrew, as much as we talk about pitch usage and kind of count leverage, I think that you guys have an underrated secret weapon. Like, I'm pretty sure that you're a highly caffeinated individual. You speak with a lot of energy. This is talked about amongst most of your pitchers. There were raves for the quality of coffee makers and coffee grounds that you were bringing in starting in spring training. And from what I understand, coffee culture has persisted into the regular season among the pitching staff. How essential do you think caffeination is to performance optimization?
As a coach, it's 100% needs to happen for sure. No, but no, I really enjoy coffee. It's like I just really enjoy it. Keeps me going for sure. I have an Instagram account called Seams and Beans that I just kind of um, my go-to is like when we're on the road, I find local roasters and I just kind of post up for a couple hours to do my work. Maybe I buy a bag of, beans, and then when we're back, in Boston, have it in the coach's room and, take some pictures or whatever. But yeah, like I also am a big believer in environments. Our little pitching office in spring training had a coffee maker. So, when Reese and Wonger and Tech and Brenly and, we're having our meetings, there's always, fresh coffee around, the smell, the aroma. You can sit and have a cup of coffee. We can talk, break charts or, game strategy or whatever. So just creating, I think coffee brings the meeting, kind of into a more casual, friendly environment. So you always, hey, let's go out and get a cup of coffee. Well, we can have a nice cup of coffee and talk pitch shapes and attack plans and all that stuff together. So yeah, the boys, Liam Hendricks brought me a bunch of coffee. The guys continue to bring some stuff in, so we always have some fresh beans in the coach's room. And yeah, I just enjoy coffee. I love it, and it keeps me going.
Did you know that coffee is the most recognizable smell in the world to the human nose? That's what scientists say.
I did not.
Yeah.
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 It's a great little. I do know that.
Yeah, it's a great little hack. If you're in a hotel room, sometimes you get a hotel room doesn't smell that good. Just open one of your K-cups that they leave there, even if you wouldn't drink that stuff. I'll kind of sprinkle it around and your room will smell like coffee. It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, so, there you go. Perfect.
Life hacks.
So
no extra charge.
We'll be replacing eye black with coffee grounds soon. That'll be the new Red Sox pitcher move.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, coffee is my wife and I really enjoy coffee. I mean, anytime you have 3 kids running around, you need to stay awake. But or 13 kids, but it's good. I just enjoy it. I think it brings people together, and that's kind of it there.
There you go. Seams and Beans. Check it out. Andrew, we appreciate the time. I know a day off is precious, so we appreciate you spending a little bit with us. You can go nurse your aches and pains from pickleball now that we are done with you. So we appreciate the visit. Continued success, Andrew. Thanks.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate having me on.
There you go. So Andrew Bailey runs on coffee. I won't put up a specific brand because it sounds like he's open to all offers. But that that was a fun question. But actually led to kind of a pretty cool insight for the culture they're building. Right, the connectivity they have in those meetings. Sit around, smell the coffee, have a cup of coffee, and let's talk. Let's not rush through these meetings. I thought that was a fascinating answer.
Yeah, when you talk about creating culture, right? Which is an overused concept or over discussed concept probably in professional sports settings. Nonetheless, it is different when you have a conversation between a pitching coach and his pitchers or his catchers that it has less to do with like, oh, you're coming into the office now. You're like, we need to fix something, as opposed to this kind of casual, hey, like I'm stopping by, I am grabbing a cup of coffee. Oh, this is an interesting flavor, and oh, by the way, like when we were throwing this bullpen session, like X pitcher threw this one pitch today that like broke in a very different fashion, and like that was really interesting. What was going into that? You can have just different kinds of organic conversations that nonetheless keep everyone kind of connected to the mothership.
Alex, a week or 2 weeks into this, the daily question, we'd say it in segment 1 of every pregame show: is this sustainable? We're 35 games in now, so it's it's still early, but it is no longer very early, right? We're closing in on a quarter of the season. I would doubt they'll be hovering in the 2.5 range all year as an ERA, but can they continue to pitch with excellence the way they have so far?
I mean, can they continue to pitch with excellence? We've seen the pitch quality in each of the individual pitchers to suggest that they can perform, that they have the capability of performing at a very high level. I still think that this is like, if you're defining probabilities, right? Like this has to be a 99th percentile probability of something that's happened to this point in the season. Like you expect there to be some kind of a regression just because like that's how outlier performances work. When you have people who are going like way above a career norm, it's difficult to stay there for too long. Gravity kind of pulls people down a little bit. So it's a bit of a downer of an answer. The likelihood is that they come back to earth somewhat, but I think nonetheless, it's also very clear that like we should be recalculating what we think of as the likely baseline level for these guys moving forward. I think that there are a lot of pitchers who you view as more likely to perform at a higher level than anything that we projected, which in turn changes the projection of the team already, which is, I mean, that's a pretty striking thing for 1/4 of the way into the season.
And theoretically, they have the potential to get better as their higher end rotational guys return, like Pivetta this week. So they go to Atlanta. You've got Cutter Crawford on the mound. You'll have Nick Pivetta on the mound in game two of the series against Chris Sale. So there will be no lack of intensity in the pitching matchup in game 2 of the series. But, Pivetta, especially, I believed coming into the season, Pivetta was poised to have a great season. I was also worried about injury because he was so intense, right? When it's February and you say, I'm throwing every pitch like it's my last one, you kind of hold your breath and hope it isn't your last one. But Pivetta coming back and Whitlock, Bayo closer than Whitlock, obviously, but they should get better theoretically as a group.
At the very least, it gives their reason to believe that they can kind of resist that drawback, by virtue of the fact that they are getting deeper and the fact that, they are getting more of their frontline starters back. I mean, they've been doing this while having bullpen games a couple times a week. It's pretty wild that the Red Sox have been able to sustain this performance through the stretch that they have. I do think that one thing we failed to ask Bailey about was just how significant it is that they're getting starts that are 7 innings at a time, 6-7 innings at a time, and how that's allowed them to be reasonably well positioned for those bullpen games and how to manage the overall staff, because there are a lot of different interlocking pieces to what we've seen thus far this year that have taken the Red Sox, I think, in a pretty unexpected direction.
All right, with the series in Atlanta comes the obvious opportunity to talk about the trade that brought Vaughn Grissom to Boston for Chris Sale. I don't think anyone would have expected that Chris Sale would be the healthier athlete in that trade, but here we are. He's pitched really well for the Braves so far, and they're being careful. They're giving him extra rest when they think he needs it. But they've gotten a lot out of Sale so far, and he'll be amped up to face the Red Sox on Wednesday.
Yeah. He's not someone who holds back when he's excited, right? He loves channeling that like kind of overwhelming emotional intensity into what he's doing on the mound. So I mean, from afar, it's been really fun to watch him kind of hopping around on the mound and once again looking super aggressive in his delivery because of the confidence that he has in his health, and like it's the arms and the legs and the flailing that's occurring all over the place, right? Like the things that make Chris Sale really difficult to pick up for opposing hitters, like that's all been in evidence. And there are so few Red Sox hitters who have faced him that it's going to be like there's going to be some shock in some of the hitters, I think, when they get to see him from that perspective. But yeah, I think that you're right. Like it's going to be Nick Pivetta. This is quite a thing, quite a depth for Nick Pivetta to be thrown back into, given his own the way that he likes to channel his own emotional intensity. Kind of a fun matchup.
And real quick on Vaughn Grissom, we haven't really seen him yet. Right, they got his first hit. At least he got that out of the way. They hit the RBI. You know had the little prayer. Created his own emoji on second base. But I'm sure it felt good to get that out of the way, and now you can just try to ease into playing baseball.
Yeah, although I think that probably the like who Von Grissom is as a player, it's probably going to take us a little while, like, give it until the summer months to figure that out, because as we saw with Trevor Story last year coming back off of that lengthy absence, obviously this one isn't comparable, but it really does take a while for a hitter to find his rhythm when he hasn't been exposed to regular play for quite a while.
All right, we don't have a ton of time left, but we want to get to the stat of the week because you are Stats Masterson, and I would be remiss at not getting something out of your Stats Masterson brain. So what do you have? Give us a stat of the week here, Alex Speier.
To me, as much as we talk about the pitching, I don't want to leave the offensive side underappreciated. And in particular, like it's been striking watching how Rafael Devers has been hitting thus far this year. Thus far, he's swung at 27% of the pitches he's seen outside of the strike zone, easily the lowest chase rate of his career. His career average entering this year had been 34.5%. Last year, it was 32.5%. He is a way more disciplined hitter right now than he's been at any other point. We'll see where this goes moving forward. But if Rafael Devers is forcing opposing pitchers to come into the strike zone, given what he can do to pitches that are in the strike zone, you have a guy, obviously he's off to a terrific start to this season when he's been healthy, and you could see some really interesting numbers for a guy who's, I mean, that is something that can vault a career for someone who's already been very good. That can take him to another level in his performance.
All right, I got a simple one for you. Jarren Duran, 5 triples, the most in Major League Baseball. The first Red Sox batter to have 5 or more triples in the first 35 games of a season since Ellis Burks back in 1989. Jim Rice, not known for triples, still has laid down the gauntlet. I think 15. He had his MVP season. And one of my favorite little-known facts, a little factoid, I guess a second stat of the day, bonus stat of the day here, Alex, is that Jim Rice, who went into the Hall of Fame with Rickey Henderson, right? They went in together. Jim Rice had more triples in his career than Rickey Henderson had in his career. And you would certainly not think that.
Rickey wanted to steal third.
It's so true. It's so true. He was stopping at second every time so he could steal third.
Yeah, the number of times that he did so in his in the 130 steal season, probably I'm guessing Rickey was a little bit ahead on steals of third, but that is not to take away from the great Jim Ed, who like what he was doing in the 1970s, like what he was doing in 1978 as a 400 total bases guy is mind-boggling. And if you don't have a full appreciation of it, like go back and look at those seasons; they were something else.
Truly remarkable, as was, I think, this edition of 310 to Left. I think we should do it again later this week. Now, a quick tease. You're going up to Hadlock Field in Portland, so you'll be checking out one of the best minor league teams in all of organized baseball, the Sea Dogs.
Absolutely, yeah. I'm looking forward to seeing kind of the big three, but that prospect team runs much deeper than Marcelo Meyer and Kyle Teal and Roman Anthony. Wickelman Gonzalez has been pitching very well for them of late. There's some unheralded guys like Zach Penrod, who was an indie leaguer at this time a year ago, who's kind of making a name for himself, and some other guys who are going to be, I think, seen in the big leagues this year. Not the expected names, but someone like Ryan Zefferjohn is throwing really well in the Sea Dogs bullpen and looks like a guy who might be on a faster track than some of the other guys at that level.
All right, if you have a little extra time, grab a coffee like Andrew Bailey recommended and go for a little walk around Fitzpatrick Stadium, the future home of Hearts of Pine. Okay, it's right there beyond right field. Don't be afraid to go check things out there, okay?
I'll need to wear merch.
I know a guy. I am the guy. We'll get you a scarf. You can walk around with a scarf. I hope it's warm enough you don't need the scarf. Alex, it was fun. Thanks so much for doing. We'll do it again on later this week. Coming your way with the next one on Friday. And thanks for checking us out on 310 to Left. We'll see you next time.